Hello, Broncos country, jumping the start or jumping the snap like Baron Browning today. Man, the Broncos won a game. That's pretty cool. Who knows how many times we'll get to say that this season? Looking at the upcoming schedule, I think it's not going to be many. Finally, we got the final member of the LTB crew jumping on for a post game reaction with me for a stock up, stock down. Frankie, how are you doing? And give me your immediate reaction from that game.
I'm doing good, I feel like we're the two drama faces, the smile and the sad face, I feel like that's kind of gonna be me a lot. Like, I don't know. Yes, the game was a nightmare and it sucked and it was kind of I feel like more of the same, but there was at least like, I don't know, it felt cleaner, as silly as that might sound. I didn't see as much just egregious nonsense where like don't get me wrong, this team is still gonna end up one of the top 5 picks in the draft. But I'd rather at least feel good about some of the parts of the coaching staff or feel a lot better about, a lot of the things going forward. I think today we saw offensive line looked really good. We'll get into that stuff all later, but I'm glad, but I'll say a part of it is definitely I live in Wisconsin. So, it's been a long time of watching those people. I say those people, I'm one of them. The Wisconsin people have elite quarterback play. So something about watching Jordan Love huck up a last second interception. And then I go in the fantasy footballs and the Snapchat group chats, and all my friends are screaming about bad quarterback play and tanking for Caleb Williams. It warms my heart a little bit because that's been my world for 7 years. And I get to be like, welcome, my friends.
It's great to have some Packers misery finally. It's just, I don't know. I don't get it's nice to get the win. It's
Yeah.
great. I just the people in my replies when the Packers kicked that late field goal to take the lead, I dropped a Drake May jersey swap. Um, and I have people coming back like, nope, we dodged it, like celebrating that idea. Guys, to Frankie's point, like this is still a bad football team.
Oh, yeah.
What I think what you're celebrating today is like the Broncos are 6-11 instead of 5-12. I just, I don't know. Pound your chest all you want. To me, it feels like, and looking at the rest of the schedule, I think like the only teams left that are worse than the Packers on the Broncos schedule to me are the Raiders, debatably, because the Raiders just beat the Packers,
Mm-hmm.
and the Vikings, debatably. Uh, every other team left on that schedule, I think, is
Right.
better than the Packers. It only gets harder. Their easy games, I keep saying it on this show, were all at the front of the season. The NFL was trying to inflate the Broncos record. And
Mm-hmm.
with that inflated record, they are 2-5. So I think it's going to be a fairly long season for me. I'm still feeling 4-13, 3-14. I don't know how many games they're going to steal. The defense is finally looking better. Credit there, but the offense is now looking considerably worse. So it kind of balances out. I don't know. The Broncos, I won't count this season because it's not over yet. But for the
Mm-hmm.
past 7 seasons, they have been a bad team, but they haven't been bad enough for the being bad to matter. They have been the Washington Wizards of the NFL. And my God, like try and get Wembenyama. Like imagine, hey, I think San Antonio Spurs fans are probably pretty happy. Do you have one bad season and you get Tim Duncan and you have 20 years of greatness, and then you have a couple more bad seasons and then you get Wembenyama and you're probably going to have another decade of greatness. Like it's nice to get a win. I see you, Mr. Large. It is nice. It feels better, I think, in the moment than a loss, but it's hard for me to not look down the road here and go, man, are we just celebrating the Broncos being 5-12 instead of 4-13 or something like that?
Yeah. So I guess I'll say this because I think you're totally right, but I will also say you're completely right. Like the rest of the schedule, it's going to be bad, guys. Like I don't see this team. It's not like I'm not predicting this team to go on a run, but with Sean Payton coming in, they've lost a lot of games to teams that I think they should have won this year. I would like to see Sean Payton win a couple of these games this year just to make me feel good about the direction of the franchise going forward. Maybe that's selfish, but I think that's important, Seeing him beat the Packers and the Raiders a couple times so I can at least say, okay, I'm not terrified at night because he lost to every coach in the NFL that got fired this year. He lost to Ron Rivera, McDaniels seems like he's not long for the league. It just makes me feel a little bit better at night knowing that, he's not going to be that awful. And again, they still might end up with the number 1 overall pick. Like, things change every week. It's so funny. Every win, it's going to be they screwed themselves. Every loss, it's going to be they got the number 1 pick. When guys, like, it's a long season and there's a lot of bad teams. I don't know if you guys are watching who the Raiders and Bears are trotting out at quarterback, or the Colts scraped out a win today with Gardner Minshew. Like, there's a lot of mess around the league. So while
there
I believe
there will be zero Badgent slander on this podcast, Frankie.
Excuse me.
Get that.
Let me try to. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to like take any guys under shots, but all I'm saying is that it's going to be a bit of a race to the bottom, I think. And I don't think Denver really has to do much to make themselves near the bottom. And considering they're not a team that's completely throwing everything in the dumpster, as much as it might feel that way, they're still going to have Sean Payton next year. And a lot of the young pieces, such as Marvin Mims, such as Javonte, the young pass rushers, PS2, those guys are still going to be here. And you don't want those guys just to completely throw away a season of development. So having hard-fought wins like this, I'm not going to say it's the end of the world. Again, we already heard it from Sean Payton. He wants to model this after what the Lions kind of did, where they started 3-13 their first year, and they end up with Penei Sewell. If this team misses out on a Drake May or Caleb Williams, but ends up with Olu, Marvin Harrison, maybe JJ McCarthy is someone that Sean Payton's a huge fan of, and ends up with that, it's really not the end of the world, And if Sean Payton set some better building blocks in place going forward with those couple of wins, with trying a little harder, I don't think that's the worst scenario,
I don't think it's the worst scenario. And again, yeah, you don't want to go 1-16 or whatever. I do think there's worse fates. But I don't know. It's good to get some things going in the right direction. I just think it's like, look at the big picture. I don't know. I've had a lot of people like, I don't know. I think a viewer of the show, even Aaron, used to be a loyal follower of me on Twitter. We've gone back and forth plenty of times on the Broncos. He is livid with me because I want the Broncos to tank. Guys, look at what this team has been for the last 8 years. Like, losing games at this point isn't, I don't know, doing this stuff, like beating the Bears on a defensive touchdown, and because Justin Fields got injured, beating the Packers by 2 points, very, very, very barely. It might have come down to a Packers offensive holding penalty that saved the Broncos from losing this game. Like, those are the type of, I think, kind of meaningless, ultimately toothless wins that like what did we say? I guess the run game was pretty cool today, but I think these are still pretty toothless wins. They don't have me going like, wow, the Broncos are a good team. It's like, man, they squeaked one out against the Packers. It raises more questions about the Packers than it answers 100%. About the Broncos for me. In the grand scheme of things, just like, what are you getting for this? It's the marshmallow experiment at Stanford, where they gave the kids one marshmallow and said, hey, if you wait a bit, you get a sweeter reward. And it's not that hard. Wait a little bit and you'll get a sweeter reward. I do want to bring this up. I think it'll be one of the headlines of the day. Mr. Large is asking, what are our opinions on the Kareem Jackson ejection?
It's very tough. I'd say probably got to be an ejection. Like, I don't know. I know a lot of people are like, oh, you can't lay shots like that. It's the situation. K-Jack has like 4 suspensions already. Ugly plays like that, he's going to not get the benefit of the doubt. It's as much as I'd love to be like, oh, they're going to look at it and fine tooth comb it. They're going to really make sure it was a dirty hit. They're not going to do that because of what he's already done so far this season. So, like, again, was it a clean or dirty hit? I'll let former players and, actual people with the more refereeing experience kind of handle that one. But for me, it's just kind of like, he's got to know better that in that situation, he can't be looking to lay a big shot, as much as it sucks. And yeah, if like he's in that situation, he knows that, then it might be better to have another safety in there, because it seems like he's going to get those type of calls right now because of what the rap is about him right now.
Yeah, well, and I think, I don't know why, it did sound like it was a defenseless receiver hit or whatever, even if it wasn't helmet to helmet. And the whole reason these rules exist are because the NFL doesn't want these types of hits to happen. They don't like, that's the player safety aspect. And to your point, Kareem Jackson has a habit of doing these plays going back before this season, but it is amplified this season. He's not going to get the benefit of the doubt. And also, the NFL is going to want to be punitive at him. They want to, one, make an example out of him and show everyone else in the league this is what's going to happen. And two, they would like Kareem Jackson to stop doing this to players because they don't want players to suffer concussions. And I don't know. I'm not buying the woe is me Kareem Jackson stuff at all anymore. I'm sorry. I do think he's a great presence in that locker room and a great leader. And there are things that are valuable about Kareem Jackson. Absolutely. My man, like he was drafted in 2010. He's been around for this whole idea of NFL football. And again, it's taking a step up this year. It's not like he was always Jonathan Abrams or whatever, like just headhunting out there. It's taking a step up this year. So I don't know, be a smart veteran. Like obviously the Broncos win this game, but that huge hit helps set up the Packers comeback, the Packers taking the lead. Like don't do that stuff. Those are huge 15-yard penalties. Even like setting aside the moral implications of what you're doing to another human, like it's very harmful to the team. And this is supposed to be a veteran leader on the team. Be smarter as a veteran leader. Frankly, you see that awesome play PJ Locke made at the end of the game. You consider that during training camp, the PJ Locke was getting just as many first team reps as Kareem Jackson. I would strongly consider making PJ Locke the starting safety opposite Justin Simmons from this point going forward.
I mean, it seems like you kind of have to. I mean, I wouldn't be terribly shocked if it's so weird because on one hand, like it wouldn't shock me if we saw K-Jack cut, but like you said, he's such an important presence to that locker room. But I mean, the league is going to continue making an example of this. And I mean, it seems like something that as much as it sucks, just isn't really going to change at this point. It really does feel like, I mean, K-Jack's always been such a good form tackler, but it seems like as his athleticism has kind of diminished, he's gone a bit more for those just kind of like, let me try to either chop hit you or really just like lay the shoulder into you. And a lot of times those are dangerous with the fact that he's not as under control anymore. So it's so tough.
Yeah, it's really tough. Okay, let's get off of that. You know what? Actually, I was gonna circle back to it. I'm just gonna, before we get into the stock up, stock down, I'm gonna hit on a little more tank stuff. I think this 8-8 points accurate. The Broncos were on in the midst of another long playoff drought before 2012, or I guess before 2011 when they kind of snuck in at 8-8. But really, like 2012 is what capitalized or catapulted them forward. What helped get them out of that awful treadmill that they were on of just 8-8, 7-9, 9-7 every single year was they finally bottomed out, got a transformational talent in the draft, and acquired a transformational quarterback. Like that's, I don't know. It's just like, you're not gonna get to where you want to be doing all this. A rebuild is coming for the Broncos eventually. It's just like, it's a car with 175,000 miles on it that needs a new engine. Okay. Like you're going to need a new car eventually. Do you want to invest a new engine in this thing? Do you want to drive it until it just completely craps out on you? Or do you want to make that investment right now? That's where the Broncos are at. Do you want to make an investment in the current iteration or a new iteration? Makes so much more sense to invest in the new iteration, and that'll be easier to do with a high draft pick. It's that simple. I think you can also savor the little wins, but the people I see that don't, I don't know, understand where this franchise is at right now drive me crazy. It's like, this is dark hours right now. I'm not saying this because I want the Broncos to be bad. I'm saying it because I want the Broncos to be good. And I know if they go 7-10 this year, it's more years of being bad than if they go 4-13. You lose 3 more regular season games this one year. You're going to win so many more regular season games and hopefully some playoff games in the near future. It drives me crazy. Joey, give me your, we'll end positive. So give me your stock down of the day.
I'm Frankie, but it's cool.
What
Stock
did I say?
down.
Did I say
You
Joey?
called me Joey, but
I'm
it's okay.
sorry, Frankie, force a habit.
It's
Frankie, give
okay.
me your stock down.
Well,
of
I'm
the
going to
day.
push back a little bit, and I will say this team's not going 7-10. I just want to say that
No, they
today
won't.
might have felt good, but they're not. They're not going to be in the middle. Like, they're going to end in that top 5. And I'd also say, as far as the loss today, as far as it hurting, the Texans lost that last game of the season last year, and everyone was bullying them and Lovie Smith about how he helped out the Bears. And then that Bears number 1 pick turned into Bryce Young, and this year the Texans made a huge leap forward with the number 2 overall pick. So I'm not saying, they're. It's not always the end of the world to move. It's going to end up where it is, and they'll make do with what they end up getting. So my stock down or my stock up?
Stock down, and then we'll close positive with stock up.
Stock down. I mean, Alex Singleton in space is still looking very rough outside of Kareem Jackson. I'd say Alex Singleton has been, an issue. We saw him get kind of murdered on the dump off ball to AJ Dillon, but anytime that dude has to move backwards, it's been a bit of a problem for the Broncos defense, and Vance Joseph has not done nearly as well as Ejiro Evero did of just keeping that guy going forward. So I'd say he's been in a bit of an issue. Russ continues to look rough. He's just dropping his eyes at the drop of a hat. I mean, that dude, there's no time where he's getting to the back of his drop and making a throw. It feels like it happens like twice a game. And the couple times it feels like it happens, that's when the O-line falls apart. So I would say that like it's rough out here for Russ. It feels like he's continuing that downward slide a little bit, except for the wide open touchdown he threw to Cortland, and Cortland continues to look great.
Yeah. It's it's bad. I don't know. I'm so disheartened with this team. I like that pick. My stock down, I'm gonna go with Kareem Jackson. I know we already hit on it, but dude, we've seen the effort stuff like in the Dolphins game, and granted, easy to check out in the Dolphins game. But checking out of that game, some lazy moments throughout this season. And then the helmet to helmet stuff just keeps happening. Like, I don't think he's like just unlucky, like he's doing this to himself, and he's got to be better. He's a veteran in the locker room taking huge 15-yard penalties regularly. Like, okay, Garrett Bowles, for example. Everyone harped on Garrett Bowles, and rightfully so. Harped on Garrett Bowles during his rookie deal because he couldn't stop taking holding penalties, which are 10-yard penalties. You have a veteran who's been in the league forever, and all of a sudden he can't stop taking 15-yard penalties. That is a serious problem, and this defense needs every bit of help it can get. That's a problem for me. He's my stock down. And then you have PJ Locke ending the game that way. I think there's a decent chance we see a change there. To use a Parcells-ism, Peyton coming off the Parcells tree, Kareem Jackson feels like a bit of a progress stopper right now.
It felt kind of shocking in the preseason when they brought Kareem back. Like, you knew it was going to be for a leadership thing, but when you look at what the safety room was going to be with Stearns and what it was going to be with Locke and with all these guys, like, it kind of felt like Kareem wasn't even going to have many snaps to really take up this year. And I mean, he's still doing the same thing he's always done, where he's playing like 100% of the snaps every week. So no, I wouldn't be shocked either. Cause I mean, he's a plenty capable player, PJ is. And I mean, he's also a cheap player, and he kind of fills that role of like, hey, we want to get a look at some of these younger guys, but we're not necessarily like trying to tank. This is an opportunity to, hey, this might be a guy that we might have found a gem here. We can get PJ Locke back on this team for another couple of years, probably at a decent bargain. Let's see what we've gotten him for the rest of the season, as opposed to let's keep throwing 35-year-old Kareem Jackson out there, letting him pick up penalties when, let's be honest, like, Kareem might be back next year, but for the past 3 years, he's kind of been like just a filler. Like, there's really been like, and I like Kareem. I like what he does for this locker room, and he's been one of my favorite players, but he's been kind of just a spot that they've just been fine with, as opposed to looking for an upgrade or even looking to see if there's anything else. And I think that that's something that kind of needs to stop in Denver. And honestly, you can say that for a lot of the positions.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's just like so many positions are inhabited by players that are not going to be on the next winning version of the Denver Broncos, the next playoff version of the Denver Broncos. Like, it's very hard. I think running back is one. I think maybe your tackles, maybe your guards, maybe maybe the offensive line. Man, that's probably about it on offense. On defense, you have Surtain, and that's it. Like,
hopefully some of the pass rushers keep.
Yeah. Oh, good point.
Sprouting.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Some of those young pass rushers too, but I don't know. Oh God, this team just makes me groan and sigh and just yeah. Okay. Frankie, let's get positive. What's your stock up?
Javante was
Oof, I
awesome
love it.
today. Javante was making cuts. He was running over dudes. Some of the lanes that were getting opened up too were just absolutely massive, which was, really fun. Like I think McGlinchey probably had a really big block on the one duo run where Javante just looked like it was like the Super Bowl run where the biggest hole whoever had ever seen. But yeah, so Javante looked awesome today. He was making some really hard cuts on that ACL. Again, it's so insane to think about what the recovery process, like what we were talking about in the offseason with Javante Williams, what our concerns were. And I mean, he looks like the same guy, like I'd say maybe the vision stuff is something that, we'll talk about. And that's always been maybe the one knock you can have with him. But like physically, like how he looks as a runner, he looks the same.
It's huge. I love the Michael Myers thigh pads too. Those are pretty
Yeah.
sweet.
Awesome.
But yeah, it's massive. This is the best he's looked, I think, since before the Raiders game, since coming back from injury. Yeah, I'm thrilled. You see him bobbing and weaving, and like you said, making cuts, looking more explosive. I thought than he has in the past, showing more of his contact balance. That's huge. I don't know. I was bumming. There was a time around that Bears game where I was like, not that he's a bad, like he looked like a fine starter, but I was just like, man, what if it's never the same? And now I'm a little more optimistic that it might be getting closer to the same. Yeah, I like that Javante Williams pick. I made him the thumbnail for a reason. I knew one of us was going to pick him because, man,
You
what a
have to.
performance. If the Broncos really want to start winning it, I don't know how many they'll win. I think they can make a lot of games at least close and at least interesting because they can just limit the number
They're
of
a grimy
possessions.
team.
Yeah, grind out the clock. Again, I don't think they're a good team, but I think the way they are built to win right now, or at least to compete in games, is a mucky, grimy sort of. It's like the Pittsburgh Panthers. Like under Pat Narduzzi, like they just have a way of mucking up games and making them a little nastier than they should be. I think that's kind of
Yeah.
the type of team they are right now.
And it's kind of funny when we think about like what the transition was supposed to be this year. Like we were supposed to get away from the muckiness, but it feels like that's the path right now, Like they should run the ball down teams' throats. They should hope for some big plays on the defense that can kind of swing football games. And I mean, I'd say for the next stop up, I'd say the early down defense the early down defense was really good today. At least in the first half, it fell apart a little bit in that second half. But like honestly, I'll give Vance Joseph a little bit of credit too. And I know that sounds crazy in Broncos world, but I was excited to see what Vance did this week. I've been, if you follow Robbie, you follow me. A big thing we've all been disappointed about is the fact that, well, not disappointed in, but it's kind of like, man, Vance is not running Vance stuff. Like if Vance was going to be failing running his stuff, it'd be like, oh man, Vance sucks. But it's like Vance is failing running stuff that he doesn't even run, and it's been like you want, obviously you blame Vance, but it's also kind of like, dude, like where is the cover zero? Where are the pressure looks? Where is the way more single high coverage? Like, just let's get after these quarterbacks. And when you have a quarterback like Jordan Love who's struggled against pressure like he has this season, a young guy, an offensive line for Green Bay that's been in shambles all year. I mean, we saw their center went down today for a series. They had to move Zach Tom inside to center. Then they were throwing in a new guy. Like, this was the opportunity to get to throw some pressures at him. In the first half, they were doing excellent. I remember the first third down, I was like, heck, hallelujah. We got some amazing personnel on the field. Baron Browning was making some things happen. It went away a little bit in the second half, but I don't know. Good stuff to see there, where at least like this team's not just like making a fool of themselves left and right on the defensive side of the ball like they were the first 3 weeks. And I mean, that's you need that when you think about how many young pieces on this defense. Like, as we're talking about, like they need to have a complete rebuild, but with the limited cap and the limited picks they have next year, they're not going to be able to swap out enough of this roster for all these guys to be gone. So you'd at least like some of these young guys to show something for next year, because guys like Jonathan Cooper, Drew Sanders, PJ Locke, maybe Damari Mathis, like they're probably going to be here next year.
Yeah, and it is huge, and you're teeing me up perfectly because that's my stock up pick. It is Vance Joseph. Not that the defense is great or even good. But over the last 3 weeks, and I'm not sure if the Packers stats were uploaded in time because we hopped on this pretty quick, and I looked these up last second as we were hopping on. If it's not including the Packers game, even more impressive because these rankings are probably likely to climb. But over the last 3 games, so Jets, Chiefs, Packers, granted 2 really bad quarterbacks in there, the Broncos are 20th in defensive EPA per play. And that's still not good. But again, through the first 4 weeks, they were the worst team in NFL history in terms of EPA per play allowed. So the fact that they're 20th this season all of a sudden is wild, just like leaps and bounds, huge improvement. And it ties into what you're saying. You're seeing more Vance Joseph stuff. You're seeing more cover zero. You're seeing him turn those styles a little more, which I think makes sense. Even if you set aside the fact that he's not coming from the Fangio tree, if you have a really bad defense, that is just like the whole idea of the Fangio defense is let's keep everything in front of us. Let's stop it from being gashed, and it forced these long, difficult drives down the field. Well, the Broncos are getting gashed anyways. Their defense is so bad. These like giving the opponent 5 easy yards. They're not messing that up very often. They're happy to convert on those 5 easy yards, down in, down out. It makes sense to go, hey, gash or be gashed. Let's try and get some explosive defensive plays. And if it burns us on the back end, so be it. We were getting torched anyways. And I'm glad they're finally making that adjustment. I do fear it might give them some more wins. Yeah. Just not great.
Yeah. The red zone defense too. That's one thing. I mean, all year it's been really good, but I mean, it's really stepped up these last couple of weeks. I mean, this week they were excellent. I want to say the Jets game, they were really good too. I mean, they really tighten up when they get within the 20s, and it's just, I like seeing good football. I know the fan in me should be rooting for the number 1 pick, but when I see the Broncos not just like look like absolute fools, it just makes me a little bit happy, Who else? It seemed like Fabian Moreau had a pretty good game playing for Damari Mathis. Damari Mathis, it seems like, has fully caught the benching, and Riley Moss isn't even playing, which, good going there. That was a great pick. Another one for the George Payton feather in the cap. So, yeah, I'm glad Fabian Moreau's looking like a decent player. At least he had a couple decent hits and wasn't seeming to get burned left and right. And they need a solid corner out there playing extra Patrick Surtain. And Surtain, do you think that should have been a pick? I mean, I know the Gene Steratore. I know neither of us are referees. Do you think it should have been a pick?
Watching the play and what I knew before Gene Steratore opened his mouth, I want to be very clear before I get yelled at by Broncos fans, I would have called that a touchdown. I would have gone. My understanding was the tiebreak goes to the wide receiver, and he seemed to win the wrestling match. I think they both had. I think Surtain had his hands on the ball first, but in those situations, it is often who wins the arm wrestle, and Dubs won it. So I thought it was a touchdown. Steratore's explanation, though, he knows the rules better than me, and if possession starts when you have 2 feet on the ground, possession did not start simultaneously, in which case Surtain had possession first. It should have been an interception, unless it's an interception and then a fumble ripped away from him. And then I don't know how you would rule that because they probably went down. It'd be down by contact. It'd be a touchback. I don't. I'm going to trust Steratore on this one because he's the officiating expert.
Just a weird play, man. There was that one, and then followed up by the deflected touchdown pass. It was such a and that's the thing too, where it's this game should have felt so much better because even the plays that went wrong for Denver, it's kind of yes, there was the open touchdown pass, but Love missed it, but then it's deflected for a catch. Patrick Surtain should have maybe had a pick, but also kind of gave up the touchdowns. Just a bunch of muck, man. This is just a mucky, gross team. I see Joey talking about Baron Browning. I saw one rep that looked really nice. I will say one thing that really excited me. We saw plays where we had Baron Browning, Jonathan Cooper, and Nick Benito on the field at the same time. They would move Jonathan Cooper inside, which I'll have to take a look to see how he does against guards. I can't remember seeing him have to do that much, but that was the look they were doing with Zach Allen being the lone defense, the true defensive lineman in the center. They were doing that on third down a little bit, which, that's exciting. That's stuff you want to see. You want to get all these athletes on the field and kind of confuse people. And I mean, when you have speed like Baron Browning and Nick Benito off the edge, which Baron Browning seems super excited to be back with the fact that kept having those neutral zones. But that's going to create guys being able to jump up, and Jonathan Cooper and Zach Allen are those guys that can kind of clean those things up. So I like seeing that look a little bit out of Vance too. I wanted to mention that a little bit today. But Barron looked all right. It seemed like he definitely wasn't a snap count. I didn't see him as much as I thought I would, but
Yeah, I'm with you. Man, here we got Joey in the chat. Do we see anything out of Baron Browning today? He did not catch my eye much, if I'm being honest. What did you see, Frankie?
He was all right. He had one pressure, and then there was the looks where they had the 3 pass rushers on the field at the same time.
Yeah. It's nice to see that back, that NASCAR package that Evro busted out. Yeah, a lot less talent in that, but I don't know. I will say I want to amend some of my statements made earlier in the show. I was emotional. Hey, that's why we do this thing. We got the emotions flying. The schedule's really hard from here on out. 2-15 gets you the number 1 overall pick. I think it's still on the table. 3-14, 4-13 is going to have anywhere. You at least in the number 1 overall pick conversation. And I think are still very likely on the table. I've got Broncos fans now yelling at me about that now. Like, hey, it's 2 wins. It's not the end of the world.
2-5.
And I think you're right. All these wins in a vacuum.
And they play the Chiefs and the Bills next. They're about to be 2-7 at the bye. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah, I just missed the year they went 6-10 or whatever. Maybe it was 7-9 with Vance Joseph. It was a bad season, but they had the 45-10 smacking of the Cardinals. I wouldn't be poo-pooing that. If they smacked the Packers 45-10, I would be rosy. Like, I'd be like, hey, it might not help the tank, but what a fun day this was today. This was great. I loved this.
I wanted that, Zach. It felt like it was maybe going to be there at points in this game. Like when there were times I was like, oh, they're gonna put them away here. And they never did it.
Yeah, I hate this. All right. Yeah, positive note. Javante's back. Defense looking better.
Sutton continues to look good.
Yeah, Sutton. He was in the running for me. And they're still in the running for one of these prodigious quarterbacks. So that's pretty exciting. Frankie, before we get out of here, where can they find your work?
Frankie's Film on Twitter. Let's Talk Broncos on YouTube. Me and Joey do the show every Thursday. We talk about, we go through the film, bring in our separate film notes, and just kind of talk about, what we saw, what we want to see changed, what we liked that they did. And yeah, so catch us over there and subscribe and like the Let's Talk Broncos channel in general.
Absolutely that. And a special highlight of Frankie's Gold Star film reviews. Excited to see some Javonte breakdowns, maybe some PJ. I don't know who you'll pick, but I imagine Javante's one of them. Excited to see those. And yeah, until next time, everybody, let's go Broncos. Go Broncos.
More wins.